I'm Michael Jacobsen and welcome to the Business of Creativity. Today we interview Vazil Hudak. Vazil is a Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Previously he was an executive at JP Morgan and Merrill Lynch before moving into public policy. More recently he was Minister of Economy in the Slovak Republic, where one of his major focuses was innovation and entrepreneurialism. Now as Vice President of the European Investment Bank, he continues that theme and spends a lot of time, energy and resource supporting innovation and small businesses. Let's see what Vazil Hudak has to say about the business of creativity. Vazil Hudak, welcome to the Business of Creativity. You've been an investment banker, a government minister, and now a Vice President of the European Investment Bank. What's your guiding vision that connects all of these parts in your life?
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey, as you said, going from commercial sector, private banking to EIB, to the government, national government. But even when working for the Slovak government, I was very much engaged in, especially in the European international politics. I think the guiding principle is that one can make a difference if he or she tries the best, and that different institutions, whether it's in private sector, in commercial banking, whether it's in government, or whether it's international banking institution, development bank like EIB, that this could be excellent vehicles for driving change and for making the world a better place to live.
We're sitting here in the European Investment Bank office in Prague, one of the most vibrant and dynamic cities in Europe. Contrasting perhaps in some way to that, you grew up in communism, in communist Czechoslovakia. Now you're working in a very commercial environment and in a totally different Europe perhaps to the one that you grew up in. How is that paradigm, the particular paradigm of growing up, you know, with this Eastern mindset and now operating in a Western mindset, how has that kind of affected the way that you operate, the way that you see entrepreneurialism, which of course was frowned upon in communistic times?
Well, it's been a huge transformation, of course, when just going in taxi, you know, through Prague for the interview. Remembering the time some 30 years ago, before 1989, before the Velvet Revolution, it's difficult to imagine that all this happened in a relatively short period of time. And then you see people, you see advertisements, you see new buildings, you see a lot of commercial activities going on in the city. And going back in memory to that time when you had only state-owned restaurants and everything was controlled by either state or by the Communist Party. Obviously this is a huge change. I think people, when I look at also my colleagues, I think people coming from that period of time, we appreciate very much what the freedom, what entrepreneurship has brought to myself, to my family, to our countries. Because it has really changed the whole nature of society. It created new opportunities for people, created opportunities for countries like my own, Slovakia, which came out of the split of Czechoslovakia, but as an independent country was able to really develop very fast, become the largest producers of cars in the world per capita, created some new startups and provided new technologies to the world. I think all this would not be possible in the old environment. So all those things, including personal issues like ability to travel, ability to see the world and to feel free, this is obviously a major benefit of those changes which have happened.
Yes, and Slovakia, as you know, is one of my favourite countries, and this is where we first met.
Yes.
And I've always felt and observed in Slovakia and Czech Republic and Central and Eastern Europe as a whole that there is an enormous amount of entrepreneurialism and innovation, and that perhaps people and residents simply had not had the same opportunities, partially because of the setbacks of communism that you know the Western counterparts had. But there's so much innovation, and in your previous role, immediately before the European Investment Bank as Minister of Economy in Slovak Republic, of course I was on your advisory board for entrepreneurialism. But entrepreneurialism and innovation, I mean, you had a whole team dedicated to this. What was it that you felt was important, you know, and what was your goal in Slovakia at that time with that role?
Well, Slovakia is a small country, as you know. It's 5.5 million people, a country which can survive, I believe, in the global environment, global economy, only if it is innovative, if it can compete based on the skills of the people, on the ability of people to create something new which would be different and which would be better than in the rest of the world. So I do believe, and being Slovak myself, I count on ability of Slovaks to innovate, to come up with new ideas. This was one aspect. The other aspect is that in Slovakia we have experienced quite a big brain drain. Many young people left the country in the last 10-15 years. They went to Germany, to UK, to other parts of Western Europe, many of them to the United States, Silicon Valley. Many of them became very successful entrepreneurs. They created their own companies. And so when I was looking at this and also working in international banking, whether it was Citi, JP Morgan, etc., and I saw many of these people being very successful outside of Slovakia. And I thought, why does it have to happen only outside of Slovakia? Why cannot we create an environment in Slovakia, in the country itself, which would bring those people back, but also give the people who are in Slovakia opportunity to grow and to actually realize their dreams, their ideas in the country itself. So this was basically kind of the start of also bringing some people. And some of them, the young people who studied and lived outside of Slovakia, who got excited about this idea, about this vision. And they came back to Slovakia, became a part of the team at the Ministry of Economy as well as Ministry of Finance, and we started designing a strategy for the support of startups in Slovakia, which would have legal, institutional, as well as financial elements. And we designed the whole program how to support such startup innovative industry, both from the point of view of government and the policies, regulations, but also in terms of creating overall environment to support this type of innovative development.
And you were very hands-on. You were speaking at conferences. You were doing all sorts of things in the ecosystem. You were meeting with startups. We were running campaigns together with the private sector and with not-for-profits. What would you say to other people in public policy? Because this is not necessarily a common thing. I mean, many governments say that they support small businesses, but you actively, as a minister, got actively involved. You rolled up your sleeves, so to speak, and you did so. What can other ministers in other countries do to support this extremely important pursuit?
Well, I believe strongly that wherever you are, whether it's public sector, private sector, NGO, civil society, whatever you do, you have to do with your heart. You have to be passionate about those issues, and you really also helped me as part of this international team of advisors to help to understand how to drive this initiative. But I always felt that such initiative can nurture, can grow only if it is supported bottom up. If you really can excite people, if you can create the trust of entrepreneurs, of people in the public administration, in state administration, that such a transformation from, let's say, classical industrial country into a country of innovation is possible. And it's not easy, frankly, because, as I mentioned, many best minds left. The state administration people are kind of, I think not much is possible because we are constrained by legislation and by some kind of traditional behavior of state bureaucracy. And also entrepreneurs, at least in the post-communist countries, they, as you know, they look at the government rather as an enemy than a supportive or enhancing factor. So it was important to break all these barriers, to persuade the entrepreneurs that you can work with government and actually together we can do something that will be better, and to create some level of excitement among the state administration, so-called state bureaucrats, to show them that, look, if we really do it, if we do it with heart, with passion, if we really push Slovakia to become the nation of innovation, then this will be good for our kids, for our grandchildren, this will be good for the country as such, and eventually for Europe and the globe. So you can do all this only if you yourself believe in this and if you are passionate and work with people, talk to them, be in touch, be active with people, and that's how I try to do it, and that's how I believe should be done.
Well, you had that vision, and now you're applying that vision in the EIB, which we'll talk about in a moment. But one of the key characteristics of entrepreneurs and innovators, I think, is having a vision, no matter how irrational it might seem and how many people might be negative against it. But you spent a lot of time in your previous role and now in your current role with real entrepreneurs, with real SMEs, small or medium enterprises. What do you think the key kind of what is an entrepreneur to you? What is an innovator or a disruptor to you?
Well, I think it's somebody who has the vision, who has the drive to go through difficult stages, as we know, creating something new, especially if it's a disruptive type of technology where you go against something that is usual or something that is commonly accepted. It requires courage, requires a patience, and certainly requires somebody who is ready to fight. So this, I think, are the characteristics, and also it has to be somebody, I think, person who can create a team. It's never only about one person. I strongly believe in teamwork, and it has to be somebody who is able to get the whole team excited, who also who can sniff for the right people, and create the
gut
feelings. Exactly, that's the right word. So I think these are characteristics which can then make such entrepreneurs successful and create something good. Yes.
Now, in your role as Vice President of the European Investment Bank, you're overseeing Central and Eastern Europe. One of your key pillars, well, firstly, what does the EIB do for people that aren't aware that it's the EU bank? What does it do?
It's actually a little big unknown of the European Union. European Investment Bank is actually the largest international financial institution in the world. Last year, in 2017, we financed different projects around the world, primarily in the European Union, but around the world at the volume of 80 billion euro, which is, by the way, by 1/3 more than the volume of World Bank's financing. Really? So it's a large institution. It was created in 1958, so this year we celebrate 60 years since the creation. It was created by the European Union, member states of the European Union, at that time because there was a need to support economic development, especially in the less developed parts of Europe, of European Union, such as Italy, Spain, the kind of southern countries. But gradually evolved. Of course, new member states like Slovakia, Czech Republic, the Baltic states, Poland, etc., joined EU and became also members of the European Union and EIB. So currently, EIB is the bank of the 28 member states of the European Union, including United Kingdom.
So it's going to be 27.
Which, unfortunately, we have the situation with Brexit, but 28 member states. And it is the bank which focuses on supporting key areas of economic and social development, but especially we are talking about supporting cohesion, which is basically bringing the less developed parts of Europe closer to the developed ones. Secondly, it's the climate change, supporting projects which can bring more environmentally friendly type of development and sustainable development. And it's also about innovation and support for small and medium enterprises.
And how does that actually work? I was surprised, talking to some of the people here in the office in Prague, that some of the loans even that flow through to SMEs can be as little or as little in the big picture as 20,000 euros. So for small businesses who look at this big scary bank, it's not that at all. It's quite approachable. Is that right?
That's correct. There are actually two types of operations in terms of how they are done or executed for those small and medium enterprises, as you mentioned. The way how we do it, because the bank is in Luxembourg, it actually has relatively small staff. It's 3,000 people. If you look at the World Bank, which is over 50,000, you can compare. Wow. So obviously we do not have the capacity to deal with every relatively small loan or operation in each country. That's why the way how we support small, medium enterprises, basically loans which are less than 20 million euro. We do it through partner institutions, partner banks in the countries.
The local banks?
Local banks, yeah. So let's say in Czech Republic we would work with the local branch of Erste or Raiffeisen Bank. Somewhere else in Italy we would work with a local branch of Unicredit or in UK HSBC and this type of local banks. And this is the way how we can penetrate and get the money really out to the final beneficiaries. If we are talking about bigger projects and companies, then we can go directly and support those projects directly.
And you're also supporting innovation, so is this mainly R&D or research and development?
As you mentioned, geographically I'm focused on the new member states,
right.
So basically from Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, down to Slovenia, Croatia and Bulgaria. I'm also overseeing some countries outside of the European Union. Actually, last week I was in some of the Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, which are also very interesting, by the way, from the point of view of how they support innovation and economic development. So in that capacity, I am looking especially at the Central European countries. We are looking at ways how to support innovation and entrepreneurship in those countries. One of the initiatives which I'm spearheading and kind of driving within the bank is support for so-called smart cities. Because this is one of the ways how to support innovation based on working on the local level, obviously engaging private sector and companies as suppliers of different so-called smart solutions. But here the bank would provide support either directly to the cities for so-called smart strategies and smart solutions, or we work with the local governments, national development banks to provide support to them, so-called investment platforms, and from this they finance local beneficiaries.
So it sounds the way that the EIB actually operates in itself is quite innovative, because you're working with governments, you're working with large actors in the ecosystem, but also providing liquidity which flows through to the SME. So you're working at a number of different levels.
That is true, yes. So I think the idea is to find a best way how to support entrepreneurship, how to support public sector, private sector. We are very much into so-called leveraging. So in any project which we approve, we have to show that on one hand there is so-called additionality. It means that the bank, through its financing, which is usually cheaper and better financial conditions than what commercial banks can provide. But on the other hand, we don't want to push out commercial banks or private sector. Our goal and our role is to fill the so-called market gaps. So the areas where commercial lenders would not go for reasons of higher risk, or for the reason of the fact that this is something new and or too large or something like that. So then the EIB basically takes this risk of first mover, and we try to fill this gap, but at the same time, and this is the second aspect, which is so-called leveraging. So we are trying to always bring other partners from private sector to come together with the EIB to support such projects. That's why we can support projects usually up to 50% of the overall financing, which creates then the opportunity for others to join.
So how can SMEs watching this engage more with the EIB? How, in practice, in reality, sitting at home, they've got a small business or they've got a growing business, and they think, wow, this sounds like it's for me, this is the kind of organisation I want to engage with. How can they actually do it?
I think there are several ways. One way is to find, and it's on the internet, on the website of EIB, what is the local office, because in each country of the European Union we have a representative office of EIB. So it's not difficult to find where such office is, what's the address, what is the contact person. So either by email or physically meet with those people. They are always ready, and this is their role to be the point of contact for the EIB. So one possibility is through the local offices of EIB. The other is obviously electronic communication. All the addresses, everything is on the website of the EIB.
So if they're engaged with the EIB, they'll be allocated a loan officer, or they'll be told to write business plans. Is there a proper procedure?
Yes, certainly
Yes.
there is a procedure. I mean, first of all, of course, we have to make sure that the project is eligible. It means can be financed
Your
by
criteria.
EIB. The criteria are fulfilled. And then once this is okay, then it goes into a process where there is a loan officer in charge of the geography or in charge of the sector of industry, of economy, who would then take over and go into details. Also, not to forget that we, as I mentioned before, we have very close cooperation with the national development banks in each country of the European Union. They also are partner institutions. So another way how to access EIB is also to connect with those national development banks and through them to connect to EIB.
And I see that you also do activities. I was in Sydney last week, and there's even an EIB office in Sydney. What does it do? What does the EIB do outside the European Union member states?
Actually, quite a lot. As I mentioned, we finance annually around 80 billion euro of operations. About 10% of this, so around 8 billion, is actually for activities outside of the European Union. So it's a relatively sizable budget, sizable part of the lending operations. Most of that is going to the so-called neighborhood areas, countries, regions which are around the European Union. And this is either eastern neighborhood with countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, but also then southern neighborhood, which includes the Balkan countries like Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia and so on, as well as Mediterranean countries, Lebanon, Jordan, North Africa. Actually, we have in this region, we have initiative which is called Economic Resilience Initiative, which was created to help with the big waves of migration, which you may remember some 2-3 years ago when huge waves of migrants were coming to Europe. And the question was how to deal with this issue long term, because it's not enough to fix the problem kind of by creating quota for refugees or migrants who can come to Europe, but really the long term solution is to create sustainable development, economic and social development in the countries from where migrants are coming, which is mostly sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, countries like Syria, Iraq and so on. So this Economic Resilience Initiative is focused on supporting economic and social development in these regions. Now, when looking in general outside of the EU, we would focus again on those projects in the areas as I mentioned. So they usually need to have some environmental aspect, energy efficiency, innovation type of projects, but also sometimes projects which are relevant for Europe, although they take place outside. For example, I was a month ago, I was in Baku in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, you travel to some very interesting
places, yes, quite a lot. Which my wife doesn't like too much, but c'est la vie. And but there was a signing of a so-called southern gas corridor, which will bring gas from Azerbaijan through Georgia, Turkey, Italy, Greece, Italy to Europe. So it's very important for the energy security of Europe, which is, as you know, very much dependent on Russian gas, to diversify the sources of gas. Not only from the north, from Norway and those countries, or south, Algeria and some other areas, but also this so-called Caspian area. And so we are actually the largest supporter and investor into the Southern Gas Corridor, where we provide the financing of 2.5 billion euro. Because we believe this is important for Europe, for the energy security of Europe, and also for the development of the countries along the corridor from Azerbaijan through Georgia to Turkey to Greece, etc.
You're an incredibly innovative bank. You're involved with things, a lot of the big banks, and we love them, but you know, you seem to be involved in so many different activities at many different levels and actually walking the walk of what you're saying in terms of truly supporting the not just big business but the entrepreneurial landscape from big level, from small level. What, from your public policy perspective and somebody who's dealing day in, day out with business and with lending, but particularly with your entrepreneurial passion, what advice could you give in closing to an entrepreneur or an SME sitting at home, growing a small business in Central and Eastern Europe, thinking, what can I do? This could be financial advice or just your general advice, because all entrepreneurs always need advice, and it's a lonely, sometimes demotivating pursuit, and you've had a lot of experience. So
difficult to kind of try to put all these ideas or maybe advice into something relatively short. But I think, based on my own experience and talking with entrepreneurs, and as you know, we also together went to many parts of Slovakia, Czech Republic, etc., Poland. I think that first advice is don't get discouraged by the fact that you are from a less developed part of Europe or global economy, or that you are from a small country, because today's technologies are the type of technologies which actually help to overcome all these physical barriers. Thanks to internet, thanks to digitalization, it's actually possible to work regionally or globally, even from a small place, somewhere in hinterlands of, let's say, eastern Slovakia, where I come from, in the Carpathian Mountains. So don't get discouraged by those limitations. Have a vision. Think about something that would be really bold and that you feel strongly and emotional about, and you believe could make a difference. Keep your eyes open, because obviously you need to see what is happening, what are the needs of people, how can you generate something that would satisfy those needs of people, and which would be new in terms of how it's done or what it brings. And then I think have the patience and the stamina, to go through the process. I think talking to potential financial partners, advisors, wise men and women always helps, because it is always about trying to get best out of others as well, and then create a team. It's always about more than one person, but try to create a team who will be motivated, who will trust in you, and as much as you trust in them, and get them excited about what you are doing and believe in what you are doing. I think this is very important, that this trust, this belief, persistence is there, and that is done with heart. So
I love that advice. I love the fact that not one piece of that advice was pursue money and be ruthless and pursue it at all costs, because of course that is a function. That's true. The money flows as a function of doing. If you do all those other things right, the money flows.
Exactly.
You provided such an insightful perspective, Vazil Hudak. Thanks for being on the Business of Creativity.
Thank you, Michael. Very nice to be with you. Thank you.